Welcome to our session here on negotiating offers. Brad and I have been doing this one for a while. It says industry, but honestly, it's anything that's non-faculty. So if you want a nonprofit job, it's the same. If you want a government job, kind of the same, kind of the same.
You just have to be more prepared.
Be more prepared. But honestly, all the techniques that we're going to talk about today are for anything that's a non-faculty. Not faculty. If you're here for a faculty negotiation, you should hop over to our YouTube site and watch that off of our YouTube site. Otherwise, everything else, even if it says industry, even if Brad puts in industry words, it honestly is identical regardless. So I'll hand it over to Brad and he will take it away.
All right, thank you, Lori, and welcome. And in my role as industry career advisor, one of my favorite things to do is to work with the postdocs and the other people who come to me with offers and say, "Can you help me negotiate?" It's my favorite thing because that means you have your offer in your hand and we're ready to go forward. So thank you for joining. I'm going to start with a question. Are you underpaid? Now, it's a bit of a rhetorical question for those of you who are postdocs and fellows, because the answer is, of course, you're underpaid if you're doing one of those. But this actually goes more broadly than that. And that is from a Glassdoor survey. It found that the average US employee could be earning 13% more per year in base salary. And that comes to about $7,500 extra dollars a year. Now, why is this? They said because 56% of them accepted the initial offer without negotiating. Now, 52% were men, 67% were women. Men did slightly better, but I wouldn't be proud of that either. And here's the kicker. 53% of the employers admitted to lowballing the offer. And this comes from a survey from the 2016-17 area, about a little over a million people. So we want to talk about negotiating today. And in today's agenda, we'll look at the offer. What do you negotiate? Do you negotiate? And which elements would you negotiate? Then we'll talk about accepting or rejecting an offer, and then spend a little bit of time at the end on getting to the new job and what will you expect when you get there. So let's start here. Throughout this past year, you have reached out to industries and companies that work in your area of expertise. You've reworked your CV into an effective resume. You've conducted informational interviews with numerous company people. You've met and talked with hundreds of industry contacts. You've updated your LinkedIn and social media profiles, and you've been on a number of telephone interviews and multiple on-site interviews, and you've presented your science many times. And then it happens. You answer the phone and you hear, "We would like to offer you a position with our company." Now that comes with likely salary information, benefits information, a start date, and then items that are specific to the position. And most often it will come initially by telephone and then be followed up by the written offer. So when that happens, what do you do now? And the most important thing to do is step back, take a breath, and think. You want to express enthusiasm and ask for time to fully consider the offer. Factor in other irons in the fire that you are working on. May you have additional jobs or an additional offer coming. And then take time to prepare any negotiation. You want to explore your options. So the question is, do you negotiate, and what do you negotiate? And in that, I would say, get some help from mentors, from us at OITE or others that you may trust. This is something that they don't teach in school. And do you accept? Most importantly, that answer is only after you've received that offer in writing. You want to address the start date and any previously planned commitments you have up front. And then when you accept that job offer, you want to reject the others as quickly as you can. And if you reject, be respectful. No need to burn any bridges here, and explain your rationale. The term I like to use when you're explaining your rationale is be specifically vague. You want to give a reason, but you don't need to go into a lot of detail around the rationale. Now, when it all comes to fruition, it breaks down to one of four things. Your offer is a great fit and a great offer. It's a great fit. You like the job, you like where it is, you like what you'd be doing, but it's a bad offer. It's a bad fit. You really don't think you want to do this job, but they gave you a great offer to do it. And it's a bad fit and a bad offer. Now, the first one and the fourth one are pretty much no-brainers. Yeah, we're probably going to move forward with that first one, and we're probably going to reject this one. But it's in the middle here where you may have an opportunity to negotiate. Can you make that, in the second one, can you make that offer better to go with the great fit? Or are there elements of the job that you could negotiate in this third one to make it a better fit to go along with that great offer? As you are thinking about your negotiation, there's factors that you want to consider. What about the nature of the job? Is it what you want to do, and will it move your career forward? The salary. Is it up to what you feel you're worth? The benefits, your bosses, who you will be working for, and your coworkers, who you'll be working with, and then the location and the lifestyle. So, what do we do? Is the offer equal to your worth? And I think it's really important that before you get into this situation, that you've done some research so you know what the value is for comparable positions. Informational interviews are an excellent way to do that. There are also online salary tools like Salary Wizard, Glassdoor, Monster.com, where you can get salary information for particular positions. One thing I would caution on these online tools, they are good to show how jobs compare across the spectrum, but they do tend to overestimate the salaries for particular jobs. And the reason they do that is twofold. Number one, it's self-reported data. But number two, it doesn't take into account tenure in the position. So obviously somebody who would be doing this job for 10 years would be making more money than somebody who has been doing it for a year. You want to know or have a pretty good idea of the cost of living in the location that the job is. As we're seeing offers now, we're seeing slightly higher offers for Boston because of the higher living, and then slightly higher offers than that for the West Coast, particularly the Bay Area. Again, factoring in the cost of living. And know what you bring to the table. So what specific skills and experience that do you have that may allow you to command a better salary? And remember, if you remember anything that I say in this whole presentation today, salary is not everything. So you want to think in terms of the total compensation. Now, what do I mean by total compensation? What are the elements beyond salary? Well, first, there are any bonuses, and these bonuses could come in a variety of different ways. They may provide a bonus when you sign on for the company. There may be an annual bonus. There may be an on-the-spot bonus brought about by some kind of performance that has been done. or a combination of these. Now, this is much more common in the private sector and somewhat in government than it is in other areas. Profit sharing. This is an industry-only thing. There are dividends, and that is a cash payment to employees based on the performance of the stock. And then there is equity. They give the employees a chance to own a piece of the company. And that comes in a couple of forms. It's stock grants and stock options. ADRs not used as much today, but those are American depository receipts. It allows people working in America to own shares of foreign companies. But I think most importantly, you need to understand how stock grants and stock options work. And so they work like this. So a stock grant, in your offer, you are offered 10 shares of stock at a value of $5 per share. The value of that stock is therefore $50. Now, over time, that stock appreciates to $10 a share. The stock value now is $100, and the value to you is $100. That's because you actually own that share of stock. Now, a stock option works a little bit differently. You are offered an option on 10 shares at $5. So the value of the stock, just like in the other example, when you start, is $50. Over time, the stock appreciates to $10, and the value of the stock is now $100. The value to you is $100 minus the $50 that you didn't own in the first place. So the value to you is, or the appreciation to you is $50. So they both are good. Stock grants obviously are better. Stock options are the ones that most companies use. Now, beyond then those things, you have the health insurance. So you want to take account of what type of plan is it? Is there a percentage that is covered by the employer? What is the cost of adding spouse and family members? And is there availability for coverage for domestic partners and availability of vision and or dental plans? There's not really a standard here across industry. It varies. It varies a lot. Are there then other types of insurance? Is there a life insurance that goes with it? Is it provided, or is there a cost? When I worked at Sandoz, we used to joke because there was a threefold benefit to the life insurance policy if the person died while on the job. And so my wife joked that if I ever died, she's going to take me down to Sandoz and throw me over the fence just to collect that triple indemnity. And there are disabilities. Are there different disability insurances? And you think the thing here is it's oftentimes there, but it may not be enough. Then there are flex benefits, and that is a combination of a number of different types of benefits that you can pick and choose what fits best for you from a menu of options. Is there retirement? You guys may not be thinking about that now, but that's something that's pretty important to me. You need to know the specific vehicles that are used. What is your retirement invested in? About 20 years ago, a company called Enron, which made the news, and it went belly up, and it left 10,000 employees without health insurance because all of their retirement was invested in company stock. So you have to just take a look and make sure that's not the case. Is there a percentage that the employer matches? And the time to vest. Vesting is how long it takes for you to be able to receive the entire value of the plan. A common vesting schedule is that these things tend to vest at about 25% per year over a 4-year period. So it would take you 4 years to get to the point where you could collect all of the retirement. And then are there any additional voluntary plans, IRAs, et cetera, that you have access to? What does the vacation and sick leave look like? Is there a starting amount? Does that increase as you're there longer? And are there paid, and you have to take a look at, can you be paid for any unused at the end of service? What are holidays? And I think in general, holidays in industry, there are less holidays in industry than there are in academia, but generally it's around 10 to 11 days per year. Do they offer things like tuition and assistance? Is it job related, or are you will it pay for anything? And is there student loan repayment? If you have to move to the West Coast or Boston or North Carolina, will they pay for that? Companies tends to be a couple different ways that they pay for it. Some companies will pay the entire cost of your relocation. So you just collect the invoices, send those to the company, and they are paid. Some companies will give you a fixed amount out front, and then you pay for the relocation. One thing you want to make sure you keep in mind here is that any kind of paid relocation gets added to your W-2 form at the end of the tax year, so it is counted as income. Do they provide assistance with housing, finding it, paying for it, all of that kind of stuff? And do they offer assistance for a spouse or partner to find a job? Is there child care available? Is it on site? Is it off site? And you have to just check, are there waiting lists or any kind of salary guidelines that you have to fall into? And is there commuter assistance? Do they pay for parking? Do they reimburse for mass transit? All of these things are potential areas of compensation that go beyond your salary. So let's now get to the point where you have the offer. And it's going to be time to negotiate. So let's first of all talk about some myths, some untruths about negotiating. And that is, number one, negotiating an enhanced salary and benefit package will create ill will with my new employer. Generally not true. It is my belief that the vast majority of the offers are made with the thought in mind that something will be negotiated. So the other side of that, the other side of the first one, which is really nothing is negotiable, how about everything is negotiable? Well, that's generally not true either. There are generally industry guidelines. There are salary standards and guidelines that companies have for particular jobs, that things have to fall in place to make sure that the pay remains equitable across the entire company. And finally, the best time to negotiate a better package is after I start my job and they see what I can do. Definitely not true. The most power you have to negotiate with any company is that time between the time they give you the offer, the written offer, and the time you sign your name to the bottom line. That is when you have the most leverage to negotiate. So preparation, and it is so important to prepare for the negotiation. Think through the offer in total. Think about the aspects of the job. Think about the aspects of compensation. You want to monetize both the compensation and the benefits so that you get a kind of total compensation figure. And that allows you to then look across different offers and make an equitable comparison. And be specific. Think through what you need to have and what you want to have. And define alternate acceptable outcomes. So if you ask for one thing and you don't get that, Is there something else that you might be satisfied with? Now, the negotiation may occur by telephone or by email, and the company will generally drive this, whether you do it by email or by phone. You can really get a good idea if most of the communication that you've had with the company throughout the interview process has come from email. Well, probably the negotiation will go that way too. Or if it's been via telephone, then the negotiation might be like that as well. Most importantly, park your emotions at the curb. This is a business discussion. And so you don't want to, it's not personal, and you don't want to take it personally. It is a business discussion. And you want to begin with a verbal conversation and start by conveying your enthusiasm, and then summarize, here's the parts I like about this offer. And then introduce the areas that you'd like to negotiate. And listen carefully to the response and ask for clarification. This is so important because the company may tip off if there is an element in the negotiation that you're asking for that can't be negotiated. They may, in their response, tip off a similar area that may well be negotiated. So take notes, stress, and these are stressful situations, even though, as I said, they are a business discussion. But you want to make sure that everything that was said is remembered. At the end, you want to restate the positions. What did we agree on? What are questions that are still out there? What didn't we agree on? And end with a thank you and some level of enthusiasm. And it's always good to send a written follow-up summarizing those areas of agreement. Now, what generally will happen is that in those areas of agreement, you will receive a revised offer letter that contains those, but you want to make sure that they are reflected correctly in that offer. Now, some final thoughts. There's some suggested wording here. So you can start with, in order to be productive to do my job, I may need to introduce the area of negotiation, or I was hoping the offer would include. And remember the difference between needs and wants, and be thorough in your preparation, as I said, because knowledge is power here. Knowing what the salary ranges are, the average salary ranges around this position, is a very important tool to know. And remember, you may have heard this before, salary is not everything. And so flexibility is key in optimizing what that offer is. One of the questions that I always ask the people that I work with in a negotiating session is that if they say no to everything you're asking, will you still take the job? And I think that's a question you need to answer in the back of your mind before you go into that negotiation. So here's some responses from employers. So if you ask for more money, they'll come back to you and say, well, what salary are you willing to work for? I hate that question, but it happens sometimes. And this is where, based on your research, based on Glassdoor, Salary Wizard, informational interviews, you have a range of salaries, and it's good to give a salary in either a range or in the middle of that range. And then if I pay you what you're asking, you will earn more than other recent hires. And this is where, if you have the background and you say, but what I bring to the table is this, this, and this, which the others don't have, you still may be able to get that. I don't have any flexibility in this regard. Salary ranges are set by my boss, HR, institution, whatever it is. And we're offering all our new hires the same non-negotiable salary. So this is where you want to, it's important to define alternate negotiating outcomes. They may not be able to pay you that salary, but maybe a bonus, maybe a sign-on bonus, an enhanced benefits package, or something else there that can get you to that goal, to your compensation goal. One of the things that I was going to say, it's often common in the negotiation that if you are negotiating with HR, they will say, well, I have to check with the hiring manager in order to do that. If you're negotiating, say, a higher salary, they'll do that. If you're negotiating with the hiring manager, they may say to you, well, I need to check with HR. Now, this is entirely normal to do. And the reason for that is this: if you're negotiating with the HR person, the extra amount of money is going to come out of the hiring manager's budget. So HR needs to check with the hiring manager to say, is that okay for you for this money to come out of your budget? And if you're negotiating with the hiring manager, that extra amount, the hiring manager may have to check with HR to make sure that with that extra amount, it still fits in to the company's pay ranges. Now, what happens if you have multiple offers? This is a good position to be in. So how do you handle it? And you want to be clear and willing to share any non-proprietary information on all parties. I generally recommend that you don't mention the company's name, but it is okay to say, well, I have an offer that is in this range from another company. Know the timelines for each and appreciate that they may differ. I think one of the best scenarios to be in is that if you have two offers and they come within the response time for each one, so that you can take those two and compare them. Oftentimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you will get an offer that has a date, and shortly after that date, you get another offer. So how do you do that? Well, you can ask for more time to decide, and that is sometimes granted, sometimes not. I think if you are reasonable about it and you're asking for another 3 to 4 days, yeah, you have a pretty good chance. If you're asking for a couple of weeks, probably not going to do that. And especially in today's environment where companies are trying to lock down their new employees, their new hires as quickly as they can. So what happens if you don't want the job? You want to decline as soon as you decide that you're not interested in talking any further. If you have multiple offers and you decide on one, once you accept that first one, make sure you decline the second one right away. And be respectful and keep the explanations brief and general. Some examples here: I don't believe it's a good fit. This may not be a good move. Here again, I think this is where you want to be specifically vague. You want to give them a reason, but you don't want to give them too detailed a reason. Now, does this work? I know of a case in point where an individual declined a job offer with a particular company. About 5 years later, this same individual interviewed with the same hiring manager that he had turned down 5 years before, just at a different company, and he was offered that job. So obviously he didn't burn any bridges, and he was able to leverage the turn down. Start date. With the vast majority of jobs in industry, they're going to want you there as soon as possible, generally within about a month. Now, there are exceptions to that. If you are interviewing and you have not yet completed your PhD, you have not defended, and you will be defending in May or June, and you make that clear out front, sometimes they will make that offer contingent upon when you finish your degree. But in a normal situation, they're going to want you there as soon as possible. It is negotiable to negotiate that start date. Sometimes you may have a paid for vacation plan, or you may have something else that is there, and you can negotiate a start date a little bit later into the future. And when a little bit later in the future, it may be a couple of weeks, certainly not a couple of months. And alternatively, if you request additional time to make your decision, as we talked about in the multiple offer piece, it may serve to delay your start time as well. So there's a couple of ways that you can go about that. Federal jobs, we talked about this, and like Lori said, this is generally for industry and for all these other jobs. Federal jobs, pretty much the same. The only thing is that they are going to require more. They're going to require more documentation to do that. Your initial offer is generally at the first step of the grade, and to increase your chances of negotiating, be very qualified, have it documented, present your past salary and those kind of things. And again, also considering, are there alternative outcomes that you can get to still get to where you want to go. Just to mention academic jobs, I think not that this is going to tell you how to negotiate them, but when you're negotiating, you just need to make sure you're aware, is the compensation a 9-month or a 12-month? Is it a base salary and bonus? And is it required that you go and get your own grants? And then are there upfront purchases required, lab setup, consumables, personnel, et cetera? So that ends the session on negotiating. We're going to move into transitioning to that new position in a second. But I want to take a minute here and stop and see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, there are questions. So one of the good ones here, I've been answering some of them. Like there was some good questions in about what you can and cannot negotiate. You have that list of, everything is negotiable, but I think we need a separate slide on that of what is actually negotiable, but I think I got that one. Okay. But here's one. How long do you usually have to consider an offer? A few days, a couple of weeks?
Normally it's between about a week and 10 days. The one thing that I'm seeing now with hiring at a level that I've never experienced before, companies are asking for that response a little early. Sometimes it's like 3 days to a week now.
Yeah. How about this? Can you, if that vacation you talked about, you have a vacation planned right after your start date, can you negotiate to start work, but then take that vacation, but not have it take away from your paid time off, your vacation days?
Yep. Yeah. And, regardless of how you try to do that, and the answer to the question is yes, that is very doable. In some cases, sometimes you have to work for a period of time before you qualify vacation. So that could be negotiated as, can we count that? Or you may have to be willing to say, okay, I'll take the time off unpaid. But that is very much a negotiable item. And bottom line, even if it's not a negotiable item, you want to make sure you make that clear to them out front when you're discussing the job.
Yeah, it's worth an ask. They may not say yes, but it's worth an ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's an interesting one about non-compete agreements. Some of the non-competes are pretty prohibitive. Do you think it's negotiable? to change the language of these non-compete agreements? I think that's a good.
That's a very, very good question. As restrictive as they are, it is very difficult to, in a legal perspective, for a company to actually enforce the non-compete. My experience with those is that it's very difficult to negotiate them because most of that is legal boilerplate language that is very difficult to negotiate. Now, you can go back to what Lori said before, and that is, it never hurts to ask.
The follow-up to this is actually an interesting one. Then can you negotiate for compensation to cover that forced time off, that cooling off period after that non-compete? So for those of you who don't know what a non-compete clause is, let's talk about that for a second. It's a time period where after you leave an organization, you can't work in the same field, in the same, or like with similar companies for X amount of time. So Zach wants to know, can you negotiate for that forced time off, severance pay, basically?
Yes. Yep. That can be negotiated as you leave. I mean, one of the things we didn't cover in here is negotiating when you leave a company, and that is very doable too. So yes, that can be done.
So another, here's a nice one. This is stressful. And especially over the phone, and the other person does this for a living, right? The HR person does this every day. This could be your first negotiation. Can you ask that everything be followed up with all the details with an email and then continue the negotiation from there? Or do you have to do it all on that first phone call?
You generally have one shot at the negotiation. So if it can be set up so that it is worked out that you say, well, can we agree on, can we document what we've agreed on so far and then continuous? Yeah, that might be able to be done.
I think that would work. I've seen it go back and forth a couple of times.
And the one thing I was going to say is that when you come down to this negotiation, you're not going to have a dozen things you want to negotiate.
No.
You're going to have generally 2 or 3 things. So, and you want to make sure that of those 2 or 3 that you assign a priority order. This is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I usually like to give them the throwaway one first. Let them say no to something, or let them say yes to something right away, and then continue on. I like to do that.
I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah,
yes.
Right? I'm going to take this next one because it's about graduate students and start dates. And I think this is such a difficult one. And the reason is because I know my defense for my PhD was bumped out for almost an entire year. A company will not wait that long. You can try to see how long they will wait for you, but in general, they will wait no longer than a month-ish, maybe 2. So that's a tough question, and I totally understand that you don't have control over your date. But that's why for the graduate students who are here in the room who don't have control over that end date as much as the postdocs do, your network is so very important to make sure that they know that you're the right person to hold that job for.
Yes, that's good advice.
Oh, this is an interesting one. Someone has asked, instead of childcare subsidies, can I negotiate pet care subsidies? I've never heard of that one.
I have not heard of that. I have not heard of it either.
Lauren, though, I'm not. I think if you had a lot of travel, so if this was like a field application scientist or some other job that had a lot of travel, that you were leaving your pet on like for long periods of time, I think that would be something I would try to negotiate. But for daily doggy daycare, I don't think you can negotiate that. Pet insurance is very common. Angela points out pet insurance is very common. I've been seeing that on a lot of different offers. You're correct, but I don't think doggy daycare is oh my God, companies have them in house. Oh my gosh, can I just take my doggo with me? Okay, I don't even have a dog. I have a cat. Everybody want to see it? Okay, now you get to see my cat. There he is, taking a nap. Anyways, all right, carry on. Yeah, Bay Area, absolutely. Bay Area, those people are crazy. Is it possible to ask for an in-person negotiation? No, never have heard that, especially not in this state.
Generally not. And I'm not sure you would actually want to do that anyway.
No, just do it by phone. All right, I think we got everything. Those are great questions. Oh, here comes another one. For a grad student looking to move into industry, should we shorten the 6 to 12 month period recommended for the job search? It is such a tough one. I think if you could get your PI to hold you over as a kind of postdoc buffer area, it would be better to kind of wait towards when you've got the defense date set. It is for graduate students, the timing is the hardest part about this. And I totally understand that. And there's no good answer because again, you don't control that defense date. Unlike the postdocs in the area who are like, woo, I'm out of here, right? So I know that's not a good answer because there is no good answer. If you're networking and just kind of keeping the dialogue open with companies that you know would be best, that is great. But you probably do want to not really start looking too hard until that defense date is really, really inked in, not just penciled in like mine was 17 times. Yeah, it moved an entire year, Brad. It was crazy.
That's yeah, and you're right. That's it's you're not controlling that date, and you're not controlling the company's hiring date. So you've got two things that you can't control. So
there's no answer for you. I know you keep asking, what about the visa? What about this? I know there's no answer. Again, one thing to note though is when hiring opens up more, right? So you can time it. And so Brad, I don't know about you, but this first quarter of 2022, I see a lot of hiring in the first quarter, not so much hiring in the fourth quarter. So fourth quarter being October, November, December. And it's really just because of the holidays. Like people don't hire, they'll just wait for the new year.
Yeah. We, and we look at that. We look at hiring in the industry now, and it's like a roller coaster, and it starts ramping up in the first quarter. The highest quarters are generally quarter 2 and quarter 3, and then down in the fourth quarter. And the rationale is exactly right. There just aren't as many hiring days. And the other is oftentimes companies are coming to the end of their budget year at that point. And so they're waiting until the first of the year to hire.
Yeah, they're waiting till that new budget line goes in. All right, I think we've got them all. You guys can continue to still, oh wait, is there a situation when you don't need to negotiate? I always say try. I always say you should ask for more money. What do you think, Brad?
I absolutely agree. Yep. Even if that offer is more money than you thought you'd ever make in your lifetime, then you ask for a little bit more.
Hey, Brad, do you have a approximate amount you always say, go try to ask for this much more money?
I don't. But I do recommend that you keep it within 10% of the annual salary.
I usually say start at 10% and then let them negotiate in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had some questions coming in that are really, really, really good. So if you are an intramural trainee, by the way, so if you belong to the NIH intramural program, both Brad and I will help you with job negotiations. You just got to drop us an email. If you are at a university, please talk to your own postdoc office. Most postdoc offices or grad offices are very well versed in helping you negotiate. So please use the resources. I always get more people more money. Brad, do you always get people more money?
Oh yeah, and we're really getting good at it nowadays.
Really getting good at it, yeah. Yeah. There's only a couple of companies out there that don't negotiate well nowadays, especially. So this one really comes into another question here is like, what if you have two job offers on the table? Can you pit them against each other?
You know, the answer to the question is yes, you can. I don't think that's a particularly good strategy. I think you want to use them as comparison. And when you're talking to the one company, you can say, I have this much money from another company. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to even mention that name, the company name. But my advice in that area is that when you're negotiating the two offers, do it in such a way that you're not actually pitting one company against the other. I think you'll come out with a better outcome, and hopefully better income.
Yeah, right. So why don't you move on to the last part here? Folks can continue to ask questions in here, and either I'll type out the answers or we'll see how we do towards the end. Okay.
So we're ready to start that new position. Before you arrive, make sure you familiarize yourself with all the documentation. They will give you kind of a nice flyer that has all the benefits in it. Take a look at the organizational chart. Where does your part of the organization fit into the overall organization? And what kind of rules and regulations does the company has the company established? Make sure that you've asked, is there anything that you should read or anything that you should have in place before that first day? And ask for a heads up on projects. It is good to keep an email conversation going with the company in that couple of weeks or month between the time that you accept and you take the job. So stay connected and plan for success. I like to look at either 30-day or 90-day plans. What is it you're going to accomplish in the first 30, the first 90 days? And here's one, if you can, take some time off. Now, not to the point where it may delay your start date, but if you can take several days because you're going to be going full tilt once you start this new job. And make sure you complete everything that you need to complete before. So all the paperwork, the background check, any drug screen and physical examination, and the relocation. If you have to relocate, it's good to do that for the job or before you start. And then when you get to that first day, it's actually unusual that any work will actually get done. It's generally spent in an orientation. You're filling out forms, you're getting a tour, and you're getting to know the company and the culture. And so you want to observe what are the work ethics, what are the work expectations. Make sure you practice office professionalism. You want to know what the notebook protocols are for that particular company and get to know your teams. Get to know your coworkers. You're going to be spending a lot of time with those people, so it's good to get to know and try to get a handle on office politics. It's always there. Sometimes it's a little bit under the radar, but try to get a handle on what's going on there and befriend the gatekeepers. Who are the people that are instrumental in getting you to see the people you need to see? And remember, transitions are always challenging and they take time. So you want to make sure you're doing it all right, but don't try to push it too fast. And these 30, 90-day work plans, they contain a summary and an overview. What are the goals and the objectives? What resources are you going to require? That's always an important part in there. Here's what I can accomplish, but I need these resources in order to do that. What assumptions have you made? And you will make some because there's not everything you know. And what risks are you taking? And then take a look back at yourself. And a SWOT is a good way to do it. So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And then what can stand in the way, the threats? And communicate, ask questions, seek help, be part of the team. And then once you start in this new job, you want to again start to build your network. And now you have a new organization and in an industry, and so you're building you have a new basis for this network. A plug here. Give back to the next generation. So put your information into the NIH alumni database. And you want to update your resume and social media profile. You don't need to do that the first couple of days you're in the job, but over the first couple of months, you're going to want to do that. And so then what resources? Certainly you can have an appointment with me around anything, excuse me, of the industry job search, helping you with your resume, helping you with your cover letter, preparing you for interviews, and then my favorite part, which is helping you with the negotiation. And certainly I'm available to ask questions, even if you don't need an appointment. If you do need an appointment, you can schedule. I have normal office hours on Wednesdays and Mondays and Wednesdays in the afternoon. There are some really good blogs on industry. One that talks about stock options and stock grants, preparing to negotiate, turning down the job offer, and a big one, and I get asked this a lot: how do I talk to my current PI about a move to industry? We talked about the salary benchmarks. Informational interviews, I think, are the best, but Glassdoor and Salary Wizard give you some good data. Just remember that oftentimes that is on the high side. And transition, and particularly that last section that we talked about in kind of as you move into the new job offer, the new job opportunity, the NIH alumni database can help you there, because they have gone through not only the job search, but they've started into their industry job. So with that, I think we still have some time here that we can take some questions if there are any.
One just came in. Let's see. Do you know if industry employees can, on their own time, carry out community services such as educational outreach? I'm wondering if it's possible not to totally abandon one's desire to do things like inspiring young scientists, give advice, etc.
Yes, and I think, and in today's environment, I think many companies encourage that kind of thing. So yes, they will do that. They generally don't want you to get an outside job because you'll be working for the company full time. But they do encourage some of the outreach and things like you talked about.
Yeah, some of them, they're actually built in-house. I know like Pfizer, for example, has a whole unit to help employees be speakers, to go judge science fairs, extract DNA from strawberries, all that kind of stuff. Many of the companies have those. And so you'll even maybe get paid time. You may not have to take time off because you can be representing the company.
Many companies do that. They give you paid time off to do that stuff. Yes.
Brad, I think there's one thing we didn't talk about that I wanted to kind of go through, and it's paid time off versus vacation days versus sick days, right? So there's a difference between PTO, which is everything, right? And then also vacation days and sick days, which are usually separate. Oh, the other one that I often, and the reason I bring that up is it's making sure which one you're getting. Are you getting PTO? Are you getting vacation and sick? And then the other one is how much can you roll over? These are point of clarification questions that are like easy for the company to kind of softball. How much can you roll over from year to year? And then the other question I always ask is, if you sever ties with the organization, do they pay out your vacation days?
Yeah, those are, and those are all questions that are good to ask as you start. And as Lori said, these are kind of softball questions. So they don't get into some real hard negotiation, but they're questions that you can ask. And how do they do that? And companies do that in a number of different ways. So it's really about getting clarification from them on how they do it.
And the reason we say to ask these questions as like you're going to ask for salary down the road, but asking questions about your time off and things like that shows that you've read the offer very, very carefully. And so it's a great way to kind of like show that you're engaged in this process because you're asking really good questions. Another couple of questions that typically you may have to ask in here is maternity, paternity policies, etc. Another one that, shoot, now it's gone. I had another one that I usually say. Oh, well, it's gone. Okay, let's see. How should you ask about, how and when should you ask about parental leave? It usually, what I've been seeing is it comes in the package of benefits. So after you've given the offer, before you start negotiate, you should ask for the package of benefits, and it should be in there. And if it's not, it's a point, that's when you ask. They're all over the place right now too. Parental leave policies, they're all over the place.
Yes, yes. And one of the things that is happening as hiring has become so competitive for companies is that they are re-looking at benefits packages. And so there are so they're looking at some new things that they're putting in these things.
Oh, there was a really good question earlier that I forgot to ask, which was, they asked me for this stupid range, right? How much money will you work for? And you tell them $90,000 to $100,000, and they gave you 100. Can you still negotiate?
Yeah, the answer to that question is yes. You can still negotiate. Now, if that question comes in the negotiation, then it's a lot less likely. But if that question comes up in the interview process, what's your salary expectation? And you give them that range of 90 to 100, and then weeks later they come back and say, well, we'll give you 100. Yes, it's still okay to negotiate.
Absolutely. Always ask for more money. They can say no.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't understand. This question, Stephanie, is a little tough for me. So I think I'm going to try to paraphrase it as best I can. So I don't have an offer yet, and I'm talking to HR. Do I talk about negotiation yet, or do I wait for the offer to come land on my table?
You want the offer before you negotiate. Now, some of these questions that we've talked about, I think, are fair game when you're talking about when you're talking to the HR person. Vacation, paid time off, maternity, those kinds of things. I think those are good questions to ask during that. But you really want to stay away from the negotiation. You don't want to play your hand too fast.
Oh, another one that I just remembered, my other one that I wanted to say is that many companies take off the week between Christmas and New Year's, and it may not be listed as a holiday. And so you need to ask whether that is time off that everyone gets. Do you have to take paid time off even though the place is closed? Like, you need to ask a little bit more details on how that works and if they even do it. It's really nice when they do. Yes. Nothing gets done between Christmas and New Year's, nothing. All right, I'm waiting for an offer, but at the same time, I need to renew my contract with my current employer. Should I just go ahead with the renewal and possibly quit, even though before my contract renewal starts?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you do the best thing for yourself. And so in that kind of scenario, my recommendation is, yes, continue on with the contract renewal, even though you know that you may get a job offer. But the recommendation is to make sure that you're covered here.
All right, this one's a tougher one because I have to paraphrase because I'm not 100% sure what it means. Arinze, I may need some help with your question. So I have, can I negotiate work?
Ooh, you just froze. Can I ask, since I haven't seen the question in the chat, can I ask whoever's question that is, if you would just unmute yourself and ask me that question?
Okay, yes, it's mine. Thank you. I apologize, it's not very clear. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. Yep.
Yes. So I'm wondering, in a scenario where most times it's one is expected to do a 9 to 5, for instance, but there may be commitments or responsibilities that might require maybe leaving at certain times to pick maybe a child up or something like that. So I'm wondering, is it often common to negotiate like the exact work time versus, oh, I have to work a certain number of hours, things like that?
You know, most companies are understanding of those kinds of things. And as long as you're putting in the recommended hours, then there's some flexibility as to when you are able to take off for childcare or for other good reasons.
Thank you.
Let me go to the chat here, since we apparently lost. Okay, I think I got that. Okay. Are there any other questions that we've missed? Oh, wait a minute. I got one new one down here, I think. Okay, so it's, can you negotiate? So what you're trying to do, what the question is can you negotiate a raise on your current salary? And that would be your current, and I'm guessing that's a postdoc salary. One of the good things for these industry jobs is that what you're making as a postdoc is generally irrelevant to what they're going to offer you. So it would be really unlikely that you would go to it for an industry job and they would offer you an amount that is less than your postdoc. Where you have to watch out for that is in government positions. They are more likely to look at your current salary, and if that's a postdoc salary, may offer you less based on that than because of your postdoc salary. But generally, that's not going to happen in industry. All right. Well, if that, I see it's 4:04, so I'm going to sign off. Again, I want to thank everybody for their participation. We did have some very good questions, and I'm certainly going to wish all of you luck as you move forward in your career. Goodbye now.